All right, everybody, welcome to tonight's show. I'm sorry that we been on a hiatus for a few weeks. We've had some things going on and just got too busy, and we just took care of family. Let's put it that way. But tonight we've got Destin, the Texas garden guy. He puts the X in Texas. His knowledge exceeds that of your average gardener. His plants, well, they speak for themselves. He is the most interesting man in the gardening world. Let's welcome Destin Noak, a.k.a. the Texas Garden Guy. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Dude, I love the intro. Did you plan that out? Did you write that out?
Yes, I did.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. That was really good, dude.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Man, seriously though, thank you for taking time out to come on with us this evening.
Oh no, absolutely, dude. I appreciate you having me on, man. I don't get a whole lot of opportunities to go on other people's podcasts, and it's kind of nice to because we do our own weekly one, the Garden Party. So it's nice to go on someone else's and kind of let them take the reins. You know,
right.
Whenever I go on someone else's podcast, it's nice because there's like no pressure on me. You know,
right? Absolutely.
It's nice. So much fun.
Before we get started, let everybody know when you have your podcast and stuff every week, the weekly.
Yes. So my podcast is on my YouTube channel. It's called The Garden Party. Am I going in and out?
Yeah, you're good. Come on, you're good now.
Okay. We do our podcast, The Garden Party, on my YouTube channel every Wednesday. It's moving to every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're coming up on a year. We'll be almost a year of doing it, and it's been fun. Podcasting, you know, there's enough room for everybody to podcast and live stream.
That's right.
So much content out there, and there's just so much to talk about, man. It's so much fun.
Right. And there is. And like you said, there's plenty of room. There's enough content to go around. And there's so many interesting conversations to be had that we don't get to have because there's not enough podcasts going on. Right. So I really like your podcast. I like checking it out. And I love the guys you get on there and girls. But you get a lot of awesome people on there, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And you guys have fun over there too.
Yeah, you know, I think probably the number one, like, you know, a piece of advice I'd give someone, you know, if they want to start a podcast is whether you're getting like 5 views or 100 views, if you're having fun doing it, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I would say out of all the content that I do, doing the podcast with some of my friends, you know, is the most fun I have, and it's the least amount of effort. You know what I mean? Because there's no video editing. So it's typically just once a week I get together with my friends and a couple of new people and have a couple cocktails and talk about gardening for an hour or so.
I'll be honest. If I had to have it my way, I would do 5 podcasts a week and be done with the videos. I would. People don't understand how much time and energy goes into shooting those videos, editing those videos, and all that goes into that, and then posting them up. They don't understand that. They just see the video and think, oh, they shot another video, you know. But there is so much that goes into that video, you know, the time that you got to prep for it, you know, what you want to talk about, you know, lay it all out, get it planned, get it shot, get it edited, and all that good stuff. By the time you get done with that video, you're sitting there going, man, that took a lot of work, you know. Yeah. And for a 20-minute video, I mean, sometimes I've got 8 hours invested in a 20-minute video, you know. So it would be a lot more fun just to come on here and talk garden than it would be to do all those videos.
Oh, 100%, man. And I know people that like on their channels, all they do is live stream for that specific, you know. And I think once you get the audience, you can probably live stream a lot more often than people think, you know.
You probably could.
My buddy Phil, with Phil's Figs, he's my co-host, and he's on every single week. He's always posting on his Instagram stories. He'll go out in the garden. He's super Italian, so he loves to make like fresh like pesto and stuff, and he posts pictures as he's going through, you know, his meal prep and everything and making the food, and shows the final product, and it looks delicious. And I told him, I was like, man, why don't you make videos of this stuff? And he said, well, I'm already doing 1 video a week and it's hard to edit all those. I was like, dude, live stream it. Just live stream it.
Yeah.
And just do it all in one shot. Don't edit it at all, you know, and let people comment as they're going. That's the other thing with the live stuff, is that you get the interaction with the audience.
That is true. That is true. And because people want to be interactive with you, they want to be able to talk to you in real time.
Right. And I see it, you know, I do a lot of events and a lot of, like, I do conventions and I do, like, you know, classes and meetups, and it is weird sometimes when you meet people and they watch you, you know, hours of video and watch your lives and stuff. And, you know, when they meet you, you know, and I've done it too with people I've met, is like, they think they know you already because of how much they've watched you.
Right.
So it's beneficial for us as well to do these lives, to kind of get to know them a little bit. Like, oh, you're that person from the chat. Yeah, we talk every single week. Like,
right,
you know,
right. I get that. So, and that would be good. Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of talk about some things. You know, I've been following you for a while, and, you know, I see you're really into growing a very large, diverse range of varieties of different things in your garden. And so I kind of wanted to touch on that first, you know, but first, let's talk about what got you into gardening before we jump into all that. What was it that made you passionate about gardening like you are?
Yeah, man, I guess it was probably, you know, growing up, my grandma and my dad and everybody, we always had gardens here in Texas. We live just south of Houston, right on the coast. And so we can pretty much grow like close to 280 days out of the year. I mean,
that's insane.
We can grow all year round. And so we have that wonderful benefit. But, you know, I didn't really get into it until probably I got out of the Air Force when I was 22. And I was going through my divorce from my first wife. And there we go. And I was kind of lost and didn't know what I wanted to do. And my dad had just started a garden in the backyard. And he was, hey, come help me till up the garden. And I was like, sure. And so I'd go out there and I'd be on the tiller, and as soon as like my hands touch the soil or your feet touch the ground, and you just kind of heard I don't know, it's like something with the humming of like a 2-stroke engine.
Right.
You know? It's just, it kind of takes your mind off of everything else that's going on. You know, it kind of found my Zen happy place. It'd be the same way whenever he had me mowing the pastures. You know, is there anything more like peaceful than being on a tractor for like 8 hours, just mowing the field? Like that is the most like therapeutic thing I've ever done in my life. That's why I mow my grandpa's lawn every week, just because of that, because I love it. And so whenever I met my wife, who I'm married to now, Ashley, we moved into our first home, and one of the first things I looked for was, how big's the backyard? Because we actually lived in a 2nd-story apartment.
Right.
And we were growing tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff on the balcony. I actually even rigged up a little quick connect hose connection to the kitchen faucet so that I could hook the hose up every day and go water everything on the back porch.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so whenever we've got this house, I was like, okay, you can do whatever you want inside, but can I just have the backyard? You know, and it all kind of just went crazy from there, man. It's been a crazy ride.
Right. I mean, I can sit there and I'm looking at all these different varieties of plants, and I'm like, I'm jealous because I can't grow those things because I don't have the room to bring them inside. Right. Yeah. And here in West Virginia, they'll definitely die. Okay. So first of all, I'm very jealous of you. Okay. I don't think it's fair that you get to live down there. Now, you can have all the heat you want. I hate heat. Right. But I am definitely jealous of all these plants you get to grow year round, because it's just not fair. Okay. It's just not fair. But what got you passionate about all these different varieties? What stirred that in you that you wanted to grow and grab? Because I'm like that. You know, I was so used to my dad and my grandpa, no fault to them, you know, but they were basic, you know, go to the greenhouse, buy the same old every mortgage lifter tomatoes, and, you know, tomato tomatoes, and, you know, green bell peppers, and hot Hungarian wax peppers, and, you know, banana peppers. It was the same old every year. I didn't know anything existed outside of that. Right. And so I get on Baker Creek one day and I'm like, oh, you know, like all this different stuff. And I'm like, holy cow, that was my attraction. That was my introduction into all these different things. and that's where the passion came for all these different things. But what was it that got you involved in that?
I guess going back into like when I first started making videos, I was already gardening, but kind of like on a smaller scale in the
Right.
backyard. I worked at the same company I work now, but I was at a position where I worked 7 days on and 7 days off.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was working 26 weeks out of the year, and
Right.
I don't have any kids, anything like that. So I had all this free time. And so I was already watching a lot of these homesteading channels like Wrangler Star and Cog Hill and Sow the Land. And
Right.
well, I like to do stuff like this. Why don't I start my own channel?
Right.
So I did like what you were saying. You know, I got a camera. I started with my phone. You know, you spend all day, you know, filming. You spend all night editing
Yep.
just for your video to get like 20 views, and
Yep.
most of them are your mom.
Yep.
And then I met a buddy, Farmer Froberg, right over here because we lived pretty close together, and he was working at a farm, and he introduced me to like TikTok and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I was kind of hesitant because I was kind of like, you know, I think people who just do YouTube are like more purists, you know, like they
Right.
want to be the purest form of content, you know.
Right.
So I was kind of hesitant, but he was like, dude, do the exact same thing you're doing, but do it in 60-second clips and turn your phone this way, you know?
Right.
And I was like, okay. Well, that kind of started taking off with some of the stuff I was doing around the house. And then I started meeting some of these nurserymen. I started meeting these nursery guys, and they were exposing me to new and newer varieties, you know? I always loved fig trees, and so I had a bunch of fig trees. Well, I didn't know there was hundreds of varieties,
Right.
you know. I didn't know there was all these different varieties of tomatoes and cucumbers. When you start spending some time with these nursery people, you know, and seeing, you know, hey, I see what's up front for sale. What do you got in the back?
Right.
Like, what are you growing? Like, what's going on back there? You start seeing some stuff that you don't see. I don't know why my camera is doing that.
You're good, man.
But yeah, man. So I got exposed to a lot of cool stuff, and I think like everybody else, you know, who gardens like all the time, you go through phases, you go through fads. You know, like one year I was really into plumerias. Next year I was really into desert roses, and you know, by next year I'll be into something else. You know,
Right.
I won't lose the passion for
Right.
the thing previously, but I'll kind of expand my knowledge. You know, and I'm a bit of a plant hoarder as well. And that, you know, line, I eventually I got my nursery and floral license here in the state of Texas, to where I actually sell my own plants now to nurseries and stuff like that. So I can kind of I can find a way to make some money, sending some plants out, but basically so I can make room for new plants, you know.
Right.
I mean, all that money goes into buying new plants. So.
Right. You got to feed the addiction somehow, right?
100%, man. I am definitely a plant hoarder. If I didn't have a dog, I got a big old German Shepherd. If I didn't have a dog, I'd probably have 2 greenhouses in the backyard, and a bunch of more garden beds. But he needs some room to run around, so I can't do that.
Well, just buy him a treadmill and put him on that.
Yeah, right.
You mentioned, you know, the figs, and it appears that you have a really big passion for figs. You know, even your hat says, you know, fig around and find out, right?
Custom patch.
Right. I love it. I love that, you know. And there is all these different figs. You know, we've talked briefly about different figs and stuff. What is the thing that got you involved in the figs? And then after that, a follow-up to it is, what's some of your favorite varieties of figs?
Yeah, so here in Texas, everybody's grandma has got a fig tree in their backyard. You know, it used to be like my granny down, you know, in LaGrange, Texas. Used to go down and visit her every spring, every summer, and you know, she would have a big old fig tree in the backyard, and we'd just go pick them. We'd go beat the mockingbirds to them. We'd go pick them and eat them right off the tree. You know, I didn't know much about figs until I met my buddy Froberg, and he really introduced me to some of these varieties, you know, getting into which ones do better here in Texas, which ones, you know, are more, you know, rust resistant, which ones, you know, are more cold hardy, you know, and you start getting into, you know, for every kind of plant you can possibly think of, there's a hobby club. Like,
Right.
if you meet the fig hunter, once you meet the fig hunter, it's all the wheels are falling off, because he'll hit you upside the head with so much knowledge. It's insane.
That's cool.
But there's hundreds of varieties of figs. My favorite would be anything by LSU. All the LSU varieties do really well here in the Houston area. Recently, my favorite is probably LSU Gold. Any of the green or gold or yellow figs, for me specifically, I really like, because not only for the good flavor, but because typically the mockingbirds don't know if they're ripe or not. If a fig has got to go from green to brown,
right,
that if you don't beat the mockingbird to it, he's going to know when it's fully ripe and he's going to get to it.
Right.
But if the fig is gold or yellow or green, it's going to kind of eventually he's going to figure it out. But
right.
It gives you a little bit of an advantage. So
buys you some time.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a misdirect,
Right.
So it's definitely that's my recommendation for most people here lately is go with the green or go with the gold.
That's cool. That's cool. Because I know there's like honey figs and I can't remember the other names of them. There's like 4 main ones, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah.
So the ones that you're talking about, because I had a LSU, I think it was an LSU purple or something like that, and it ended up dying. It was one of the ones that I grew, and then it did really well, and then it died that winter. It just killed it. But the way that it was doing, it just couldn't handle the cold up here. So is there like what types of figs do you could handle the cold up in West Virginia? I mean, or is there any, or are you gonna have to bring them in? Because I know there's people who have figs. I've seen fig trees, like I'm talking big fig trees out in people's yards here, but I have not found the fig tree that is like that I can plant and make a big tree in my yard. So do you know any that might be able to sustain itself in West Virginia?
Yeah, I would look towards there's a variety that's super popular, and it's becoming, figs are in general are becoming more popular in stores, not only because they're super easy to grow, they're drought tolerant. Most of them are pretty cold tolerant. If they do die, well, a lot of people make the mistake that they think that they're completely because they die back in the winter, and they'll die all the way back to the ground and then come right back up. But also, not just because they're so easy to grow, is that they're very popular with Middle Easterners, and they're very popular with Asians. The Asian people that are migrating over here, they really enjoy the figs as well. But for up in West Virginia, I'd recommend anything the Chicago Hardy. It's becoming a lot more common, like in Lowe's and Home Depot and some other stores. And then also anything the white Marseille. The white Marseille. Yeah, the white Marseille fig doesn't matter. I mean, we've had some pretty cold winters. We've had some pretty, like, as of late. I mean, it's not strange for us to see, down it's like 15 degrees, here in the Houston area, like in a really cold, and most of my figs will die back to the base. The white Marseille does not. It has never died back at all, and it's a big time producer, and it's one of those that stays yellow. Yellowish white, so that would be a good one. I would say for up north. Phil from Phil's Figs usually says the Mount Etna varieties. Those are going to be the ones you're looking for. A good resource for that would be philsfigs.com. He sells cuttings and rooted cuttings, but if you can't find what you're looking for there, you can also get them from figbid.com. Figbid.com is like eBay for figs. Like people, dude, there's some rare varieties that, like, for a 12-inch cutting, you'll pay like $80 for.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy because some of these just don't grow that fast. Most figs are really quick growers. There's some that don't grow that fast, and they're more desired. One of the ones that Phil sent me, actually, it didn't make it, but I'm going to try to get another one this fall. He calls it the Godfather fig, because on the set of Godfather Part 1, the scene where Don Corleone is out in the garden and
Right.
he's chasing the kid around with like an
Right.
orange in his mouth.
Yep.
There's two fig trees in the background, and the set designer took those figs home and and those are the figs that they call the Godfather figs. They're actually so every one of those Godfather fig cuttings is a descendant of the one who was on the set of the movie.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So he's got one of them. He's got one of them. He sent a cutting to me. It just didn't make it.
So, what kind of pot can you grow these in? Because like obviously I wouldn't be able to grow them outdoors. Some of these rare ones, or even some of the ones like the LSU purple or LSU gold. I would like to grow them, but I'd have to grow them in a pot. What size pot would you be able to grow them in and actually get something off of them?
Oh yeah. Well, honestly, man, I'm a proponent of gradual up potting. So say like I go buy a fig tree from Lowe's or Home Depot tomorrow. It's in a 3-gallon pot.
Right.
I'm gonna check it, and if it doesn't need to be repotted, I'm gonna leave it in that pot until I start seeing roots coming out the bottom. Now, the roots on a fig are crazy. They will grow through the pot into the ground, and you'll never get it up.
Right.
So if you're going to grow in a pot and you're going to put it on the soil, on the grass or whatever, you need to move it like once a month.
Okay.
But I'll wait until I see that fig tree start growing roots at the bottom. Even in a 3-gallon pot, it'll grow 6 foot tall and put out figs.
Really?
I got figs that I've got figs on trees. Let's see. I usually don't trim my trees until like right before the first freeze, which here in the Houston area is like early January, maybe late December. So that's when I do my pruning for propagations. I'll propagate them over winter in the garage, and by spring there will be some cuttings that I get figs off of so the first year.
That's insane.
And they'll be a foot tall, and I'll get figs on them.
That's insane.
Yeah, and they'll grow anywhere between a foot to 3 feet a year. Wow. It's insane. So if I would say gradual up pot, my favorite thing to do with, and you probably have access to these. I grow a lot of stuff in those cattle mineral lick tubs.
Yep.
I grow a lot of stuff in those, and you can throw those on like a dolly and move them around into like the garage or something. What I would do if I were you, grow them in those cattle mineral lick tubs, and before winter, before you want to bring it into the garage or something, just cut it all the way back.
Okay. Just
cut it all the way back to the pot. Bring it inside, wait till spring, and then it'll just take off like wildfire.
Cool. So if people are like me, we're not actually looking to grow a tree. We're just going to grow a shrub every year, and it's going to produce figs every year. Yeah. What's the time frame? Because I had a Chicago Hardy, and the Arctic blast come through 2 years in a row, and the second year it wiped it out. It just couldn't handle that second one. But every year it produced figs, but they never got ripe. They never got brown. Before the freeze would come, before frost would come, they were still green. They would start turning a little bit of brown on the end, you know what I mean? But you'd pick them and they would still be too firm, you know what I mean? So what time frame are we looking here, or to get ripe figs? And how come something like that would happen on a Chicago Hardy here? Not getting figs in that. And is there anything you can do to fix that, to help them to grow quicker?
Yes. So most like common figs that you're gonna like, pretty much, there are some other varieties of figs that are not common variety figs. We won't talk about those. But for just common variety figs that don't need a fig wasp or anything like that, you're gonna get 2 and sometimes 3 crops of figs.
Wow.
Sometimes here in the Texas area, I'll get 3 crops from one tree.
Wow.
So what is probably happening, and it happens to Phil sometimes in North Carolina, is that your figs will sometimes even put out they call them figlets. Little baby figs are called figlets. It'll start putting those out, and then you'll get a late spring frost, and then it'll wipe those out.
Okay.
And then that plant is recovering all spring and summer long, and it starts putting out those figs. And before they can fully ripen, figs can take up to like 60 days to ripen.
Wow.
So before they're actually ripening, they're getting hit by the freeze and they're falling off.
Okay.
So what you need to what sounds like you need to do is protect your fig inside until the last frost is completely gone.
Okay.
They can handle a little bit of a freeze,
Right.
but they have that fight or flight instinct where they'll just drop their figs and focus their energy on surviving. You know what I mean?
Okay. I wonder if I could grow them in my greenhouse and do well. I know during the winter time I can grow cabbage in the greenhouse and it'll last all year. Whether I have an Arctic blast or not, the cabbage will still stay fine. So I could probably grow figs in the greenhouse and they do good.
I would say so. I would say so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's worth a try. I mean, especially because you can get a cutting and like from someone else's tree. That's what you should do. That's
Right.
what you should. So this is my idea. You said you got people, you've seen figs around.
Yep.
Go find someone who's got a fig and go get a cutting off one of their figs.
Okay.
Because that one is clearly a strong cold hardy variety.
Right.
And it's going to put out. Go get a cutting off one of theirs.
Okay. Well, I tried that with the one guy, and he was an old codger. He said, "You ain't got cutting on my fig tree," you know.
Oh, just don't tell him. No, I'm just kidding.
I got covert hop mission over there. I get some cuttings, man. You know. But no, I tried that with that one old guy, and he was like, "Nah, you ain't cutting on my fig tree," you know. So I was like, "All right." He was probably like 80 years old. So, but the other guy I haven't talked to yet. I know where it's at, and I haven't talked to him. But these were actual like trees, like they were like 20-foot tall, bush-looking things, you know. And I'm like, there's a fig tree right there. Like, I had to fight every instinct in me not to run over there and just start picking figs off the tree and eating them, you know, because I love them. I love them to death. They're super good, but I just have not had any luck with them. So.
I'll say I would legit go knock on their door and ask, say, hey, can I pay you like $10, $20 for like a cutting? I've actually done that at a nursery before, because they had this giant fig tree, like you were talking about, that was huge, and they didn't even know what variety it was, but it had these big black figs on it. Yeah. And they were huge. And I said, how much for the tree? And she's like, $80. And honestly, it needed to go on the ground. And most of mine are all in containers here. Right. I just don't have the space to put them all on the ground. And I was like, can I just buy like a 3-foot cutting for like $20? And she's like, yeah, go ahead. So I took a decent sized 3-foot cutting. And I made like 6 trees out of that. You know?
Did you ever find out what it was?
It was actually a black mission fig, but they were just really big. It was a mature tree. The more mature your tree is, the bigger and like more delicious your figs are going to get. Okay. Yeah, it's, you know, I get a lot of people ask me like, hey, why aren't my figs kind of small this year? You know, why are, you know, not just that, but like the spring crop isn't always the quality crop. The fall crop is more the quality, you know. Right. So like it's, the older the tree, the better they taste, I feel like.
So if you're cutting it all the way back every year and putting it away for the wintertime, is it just like resetting itself as a new tree every year? So you're not going to have big figs then, right?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, because I have some that will die all the way back. Then I have some that, like, you know, some of the limbs, I'll have just a big stump coming out of the ground, you know?
Right.
It just depends on the variety, you know. I like the Chicago Hardy and the White Marseille. They take a beating, and they keep coming back. Like, they don't ever die back from me. It's wild.
Right. I know the White Marseille, I planted it beside the house whenever I planted it, and I thought it was dead. So I put a cover crop over around it, and I started ripping the cover crop up, and I'm like, I got fig leaves. Hey, whoa, it survived. Holy cow, it's live, you know? So, and it had limbs that were laid down because the cover crop had laid them down, and they started rooting too. So I just let them root, and I'm going to let them get really nice, and I'm going to cut them off and put them in pots, and then next spring plant them out. Yeah. So, yeah, I was pretty awesome. Happy about that. Yeah. So the next question I have is, you know, outside of figs, what is your, next favorite thing to grow?
Here lately, it's been a lot of tropical stuff, like desert roses. Desert roses or adeniums, I never really noticed them until like 2 years ago. I've got a buddy named Jerome. We met because he actually has a YouTube channel called The Bonsai Supply. Okay. And he's they moved here from, I think, from Florida or Georgia out to Houston. And I wanted to kind of get like a an interview with him. We ended up becoming really good friends. And he showed me his like collection, and like I kind of got into like these desert roses, and you know, it was really neat because they have these beautiful flowers and stuff like that. But what's really cool is the caudex. You know, they have these fat trunks,
Right.
and a lot of times you get them from like the nurseries, and they're almost completely submerged in soil. So it's kind of like a fortune cookie or like an Easter egg or like an iceberg. Like you never
Right.
know what you're gonna get until you crack that pot open. And you know, it's crazy what these trunks do. And they're really popular in the bonsai space. I wouldn't call myself a bonsai artist. I don't really do a whole lot of wiring or anything like that. But
Right.
I like the way they plant them, you know, like in shallow pots where you can expose that caudex and see all the intertwining and all the
Right.
cool trunk space. And I use a lot of the principles that the bonsai folks use. And now I think I posted that picture or that video yesterday. I probably got around 30 or so, and pretty much all different varieties. And I've even started growing them from seed. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
another thing that, you know, I don't really buy anything that I can't propagate or sell. You know, just like just like plumerias and stuff. Like once you grow it from seed, it's whatever you call it. Like there's no, you know, trademark on this. Like it's whatever you call it once you grow it from seed or a cutting or
Right.
whatever, you know. Same thing with figs. If you lose the label for your fig tree, I can narrow it down, but I'll never know for sure what variety it is. So label your figs really well.
Right.
um, so, but yeah, I try not to even, I really don't even buy anything. I always check the label first and see if it's trademarked or patented. If that's the case, I usually won't buy it because I'm a propagator. I love propagating. And I love growing stuff from seed, seeing
Yep.
stuff grow from a little bitty thing to, you know, something big and beautiful. And so now I'm trying to build up my nursery stock of all these desert roses so that they can cross pollinate and make different
Ooh.
varieties. What's really common with desert roses here in the US is that most of them are grafted. The ones you're going to find are grafted. So there'll be a very generic colored desert rose, and they'll cut the top off and they'll graft on an exotic one.
Okay.
The problem with grafting is they don't always have the most beautiful transition from host to graft.
Right.
Um, so if you can grow a nice stock of beautiful ungrafted adeniums with exotic colors and stuff, there's going to be a market for that. So that's what I'm trying to build. The problem is desert roses don't typically put out seeds for 3 to 7 years. First
Oh
three to
my
seven
God.
years. So
Oh.
it's a long game. You got to be
Yeah.
invested. You got to be invested. You know, but hey, it's we got nothing but time. You know.
So is it only every 3 to 7 years that they put off, or just at first and then they put every year?
So they don't typically reach maturity until between 3 and 7 years. I'm seeing mine become mature a little like closer to the 3 year mark,
Okay.
to where they start putting out seed pods.
Right.
So, but yeah, they have to reach a maturity level before they start putting out viable seed pods.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
So when you were talking about the trademark stuff, and we, you know, that kind of brings up in my mind the purple tomato. You know,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
that thing is just going to be. There's going to be people. Somebody down the road is going to have had a tomato that cross pollinated with that, and then they're going to start selling that, and then you're going to have those guys come down and sue them because it was cross pollinated with that purple tomato. That's going to be a wreck in 3 to 5 years. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and we talked about it on the garden party a little bit. You know, we had a discussion because I've got friends that are, you know, like very anti-GMO, you know,
Right.
and I don't really have a strong opinion on it. Really, you know, I know that GMOs have benefited a lot of people. You know, you can ask farmers, you know, that you know, having genetically modified crops of, you know, being
Save
disease
their
resistant
farm.
and pests, you know, I mean, it's solved, you know, hunger around the world, you know.
Yep.
So I mean, it's done good things, but it's also made a lot of people rich, and it's also caused other problems. You know,
Yes, it
there's no
has.
there's never 100% solution when it comes to stuff like that. You're never gonna make everybody happy. But I bet Baker Creek was kind of upset that they did that, though.
Well, I noticed it was like on their magazine or something, and then once they found out it was GMO, it was gone, and I was like, hang on a minute, was that the same tomato?
I think not only that, but I don't think they were. Was it just that it was GMO, or was it also that someone else has the patent for it? Wasn't that also it?
It might be something to do with it too.
Yeah, I think it had some. That might. I don't quote me on that.
Right.
But we had always. I had joked around about on the podcast we had referred to the Baker Creek guy as the Baker Creek hobo. And I was trying to get him on,
I've tried to get him on too.
Yeah, and I've since making. I had a funny hat on, and I was like apologizing for calling him the Baker Creek hobo. And so I don't think he's coming on my podcast anytime soon. But I've since seen his Instagram, like his personal one, and he seems like a really nice guy. They do a lot of charity stuff, so
right.
They seem like really good people over at Baker Creek, especially. I think his name's Ryan too.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And so, he seems like a really nice guy.
Every year, Baker Creek sends me a big, huge box full of seeds to give away to veterans.
Yeah.
And so I love him over there. And I've been wanting to get him on my show, but they were like, well, we'll tell him. And if he reaches out to you, it's on him, But I love the way he dresses because he does kind of dress like a hobo. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. His Christmas thing was hilarious, bro.
Oh my God.
The Christmas thing had me dying laughing,
Dude, he is straight out of like a Dr. Seuss book.
Right.
All of his videos, I'm like, this dude is out there, and he's right. I want to party with this guy. He seems pretty cool.
No doubt, man. Like all day long party with that guy. But like we were saying, there are those things that could cross into being, get you into trouble, sued, whatever. So desert roses don't really have any of that. Then I guess is what you're saying.
Not from what I've seen, man. I have not seen much, and honestly, I don't do much propagating. So anything that I would get would be grown from seed, so it wouldn't really count. It'd be they're all so close together. I'm getting cross pollination, so anything I'm getting from seed is good. You can propagate a desert rose, and I've done it. The problem when you propagate is that it never grows that fat caudex. If you propagate it, it'll grow tall and skinny. It'll put out blooms really fast, but it'll never get that fat caudex, that fat butt, like a seed grown one does.
Right.
That's why they graft them on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they graft it. So I'm trying to understand why they grow like they do. Why is it that they grow that big fat bulb? And the other thing that I wanted to ask too is, if you left it like you get it from the store where that bulb is under the ground, would that throw roots off or no?
So good. That's a good question. With desert roses, they're called caudiforms. Caudiforms, it's kind of they're like a camel. In that caudiform, they grow out in the desert. They're from the Mediterranean and like Madagascar, like kind of like in that area. But they grow like in very arid areas, you know what I mean?
Right.
So they store all their water in the caudex. What's really cool, bonsai, if you look up some a desert rose bonsais, you'll see they're super short and stout. What bonsai folks will do is they will literally not water a desert rose for like 6 months, and it'll shrivel up. It'll actually kind of shrivel up like a dry sponge, and then they'll water it, and it'll explode. Like it'll get super wide.
Right.
It'll soak up all that water. And that kind of trains the caudex to kind of be wide and fat. If you were to leave it in the black soil, like you get from the store, a lot of people do grow them in black soil, which is totally fine. The problem you're going to have with black, and when I say black soil, I mean like peat moss, cocoa core, perlite, stuff like that. The problem people typically have, that's usually what happens when people tell me, hey, I had a desert rose, but I killed it. it holds a lot of moisture. It holds a lot of moisture, and when you have like moisture pockets up against that caudex, it tends to get root rot.
Okay.
Really. So I grow my stuff in mostly soils. It's called like a bonsai blend. If you look at a bonsai soil, it's almost like gravel. They'll have like calcine clay, perlite. They'll even put like leca balls in it too. You know, stuff like that, which allows for really good drainage. So you're watering I water mine more frequently because it's so hot, but it's allowing really good drainage to go through the pot. You know, you don't want it sitting there in water. So some people say that if you want radical root growth, that you need to leave it in black soil. But then I've heard other people say different. And I've had good success pretty much only growing mine, even my seedlings, in the rocky soil, rocky. So not you wouldn't start your seeds in the.
That's what I was getting ready to ask. How do you start them?
Yeah, I start them in I always tell people to buy the most expensive, like the most premium soil you can afford when it comes to seed starting. And so I use like a pretty decent mix, but it's got a lot of like I guess you would call it like a succulent soil because it's got a lot of that tornado sand in it, you know. But you just don't water them as often. You keep a humidity dome on them. You mist them maybe once a week, and it holds that that moisture. But when they're seedlings, it allows them to kind of develop before you put them into like that. So once they're about the size of my finger, that's when I transplant them.
About how hot do you need to like have a heat mat? I'm assuming you put a heat mat under them, and when you're starting the seeds.
Yes, yeah, I did. I did this past winter only because they were in my garage. My garage isn't heated, but it never gets below freezing. I don't know what. I don't have any fancy heat mats. I just have the ones off Amazon that you get. And I think it just raises it like 10 degrees, like whatever it is, it's 10 degrees above that, So nothing fancy, but I mean, people can grow them right now. You can order the seeds online and grow them at your house. I mean, it's pretty neat.
I think I want to grow one because that sounds like fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like bonsai stuff anyhow. I like taking pepper plants and turning them into bonsais.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So the next question I was going to ask is what's been the hardest thing for you to grow?
Herbs.
Really?
Dude, I kill herbs so quick, man.
Like basil and dill and stuff?
So I've had pretty good luck with basil, but when I say basil, I'm talking like Thai basil and it's like that. The stuff I just kind of leave alone for like the pollen. I grow Thai and holy basil and stuff like that for the pollinators. I kind of just grow them. I don't really harvest a lot with them, but we have a hard time. It just gets so hot. It's just so hot here, man.
Right, bolts.
Yeah, the stuff bolts or just gets toasted. Dill, I found that I've had some good success with dill. If I grow it, like I'll get it germinated in the sun, but then I gotta move it. I gotta move it to almost complete shade.
Really?
Because it gets so hot, man. This past year was the first year I kept a rosemary plant alive. Like, dude, I can grow a lot of things, but I have never had good luck with herbs. I'm just not
crazy.
The best herb gardener. Yeah, everybody's got something they just kill every year, right?
I wouldn't have thought a herb would have got you. I would have thought it was some kind of crazy plant that that you got from some guy down the road or something.
No, man, it's herbs. Every single, I try, and you don't give up. You never give up, man. I have found, like starting from seed, herbs take off a little better. My issue, and I think once I get a space where I can start doing more things in the ground and all that, my problem is everything's in a container here. I live in, I didn't say this in the beginning, but I live in a subdivision here in Texas. I have a couple hundred plants on less than a 32nd of an acre. So like, and I have utility lines that run all around my backyard. So like,
really,
it's very hard.
Dig anywhere.
I can't dig hardly anywhere. So you kind of got to work to your advantage. And I think that's why a lot of people enjoy my videos. I get the comments where like, you need a bigger place. You need a farm. You need all this.
Right.
And I'm kind of on the other side of it where, if I had the more money, more problems, more land, more problems. You get property and land, and you're mending fences and you're having to get bigger equipment and stuff. I think a lot of people enjoy my channel because there's a lot of people out there that live in subdivisions and smaller plots, and they see that I can grow all this stuff in containers in a smaller backyard, and it kind of inspires them to maybe want to do the same. So
Right.
I feel like if you utilize your space efficiently, everybody doesn't need 10 acres.
No.
So it's kind of neat like that.
Right. And that is something that I did want to touch on too, because the next question was, what are some of the challenges that you face growing in an urban setting, and also growing in Texas where it's already hot to begin with, and where you're so close together, it's got to be even hotter in the subdivision. So what's some of those challenges that you face growing in there?
Yeah, the heat, man. The heat is something else. Here in Texas, we bitch about the heat until it's cold, and then when it's cold, we bitch about the cold. Luckily, it's only cold here for I have a greenhouse. I've got a 20-foot by a 15-foot greenhouse. I really only need a greenhouse for maybe 45 days out of the year. I mean,
really,
it's pretty rare. I mean, we'll get freezing temperatures and it'll stay cold for a couple of weeks, but it doesn't stay cold very long. It's one of those things where I don't know. I'm typically putting my tomatoes in the ground by middle of March, early to middle of March.
I ain't even planting tomatoes at that time.
I'm
not even starting seeds.
Oh, dude. So we start seeds. We start seeds for peppers around Thanksgiving, and we start tomato seeds around Christmas Eve.
What?
So, yeah, dude.
I really hate you right now. It's not fair, bro. It's not fair.
Yeah, but we don't get the 4 seasons like y'all do either, so it's kind of rough because we'll have a really good tomato crop for about 45 days until it starts getting in the 90s.
Right.
We had a really good spring this year, where it was pretty mild, and we're getting decent rain as well. So up until mid-April, May, I was getting quite a bit of tomatoes, and then we got into June and July, and it started petering out. And then we had the hurricane come through, had 100-mile-an-hour winds, and
I seen that, man.
Dude,
I was waiting for your stuff to just blow over and blow away. It stayed intact,
Dude, I was so surprised that my greenhouse and everything. I wasn't surprised. It's not our first hurricane, and it's not our first tropical storm. Some people might not know this, but my greenhouse isn't even anchored to the ground in any way. So I've got a Shelter Logic 20-foot by 15-foot greenhouse, and I didn't want to put anything in the ground. So what I did is I made a border of 4x6s all the way around, and then I put the greenhouse and I secured it to those boards. Okay. So those boards are making contact with the ground, and they stay wet, they stay moist. They're so freaking heavy. You're not moving those.
Right.
The thing will rip apart before those are moving. And so I put it to the test. We had 100-mile-an-hour winds, man. It was wild to watch.
Yeah, it definitely got put to the test, because I was watching those videos thinking, that something's going to blow away soon. One of them wheeled raised beds are going to go whoop right across the yard, but they never went nowhere.
They didn't budge, man. They didn't budge. I mean, I think all the rain we were getting, really weighed them down, because they have a reservoir. Those Vigo rolling containers they have a reservoir on the bottom. So the way it works is it's the regular round bed, but it's got a plastic reservoir, and it holds a certain amount of water, and then it'll overflow. But it takes a little bit for it to overflow. So getting all that rain, I mean, that damn thing could have been halfway filled up and is adding extra weight. But they didn't roll at all, man. That's crazy.
No, they didn't go anywhere out, because I was definitely watching them videos. I was like, next update video, we're going to see them things across the yard,
Yeah, man.
They would be, So it was crazy.
Dude, it was wild. It was wild. My fence took a beating, but all my plants pretty much did it pretty well.
They did. I was very surprised. You kind of answered the next question, of why you decided to grow in the raised beds versus the in-ground, because you got all the wires and stuff like that.
But I've been touching that. So I mean, honestly, I I could put some stuff in the ground if I wanted to, but it'd be pretty rough because in the subdivision, the soil they use all this backfill like gumbo soil in this subdivision. But I will say that even if I had acres and acres, I would still do my own kind of gardening, probably in raised beds, just because I like to be able to. It's easier to manipulate a small area of soil. People don't understand this. They say, "Why don't you grow on the ground? Why don't you go on the ground?" Well, if you start growing in the ground and just you show up, you buy your house and you say, "Hey, I'm going to put something in the ground." You can test that soil, and you may need this and that. And, you can spend a lot of money amending soil, dude.
You can.
I know you spend a lot of money. Yeah. But so, I mean, being able to just get a truckload of premium, compost, man, dude, you can fill up a raised bed. You can grow anything in that.
That's right.
I've never done one soil sample in my entire life because I've just always bagged my soil in, so that's one benefit of being able to, manipulate it and control your environment, and control your medium. I mean, yeah.
I totally agree with that because I never had grown in raised beds before. Everything was always in ground. That's how I was taught. So that's the only thing I knew. And then in 2022, I built a raised bed out of old timbers, 20-some foot long, 3 foot wide. And I was like, because I wanted to grow root crops in 2022. I wanted to grow giant root crops, and so anyhow, I did that, and I was like, hey, this is nice because I know everything that's in there. I know that I put goat manure and goat, bedding and stuff like that down in the bottom. I covered it with good compost on the top. That first year I grew a 19-pound rutabaga,
Yeah.
I mean, and then the next year I reached out to Epic Gardening and they sponsored me with raised beds and stuff. Right. Well, last year I grew 2 of them at 31 pound. One was 31 pound, 3 ounce, and the other one was 31 pound, 6 ounce. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get that this year, if I'm going to beat that or not. I got one out there right now. It's about that big around. All right. Yeah. And it's probably about that's taller than what I can get in the video. And he has probably about 15 inches, and it's starting to throw off another head. Right. So you got the one stem. So now it's getting another. Yeah. And last year I was getting 2 inches of growth a day in diameter. Right. But by August, it had slacked off to about 1 inch a day. And then by the end of it, when I got scared because I started losing stuff for root rot, right? And like carrots started going down like crazy and some other things. And I went and pulled that one up. It wasn't ready, but I got scared and I wanted the state record. And I didn't want to, because if it rots, you don't get the state record.
Right.
So I pulled it, waited, and then planted it back and thought, well, it'll grow to the end of the year. Well, it ended up going down, and then the other one surpassed it by 3 ounces. So I was like, well, all right, that's cool. But this one, we're getting ready to get into the cool season. By the end of August, it starts to cool off in September and stuff. And if this one can hold on, because I've never had one go past the end of August. Usually mid-August to 25th, I'm having to pull them. Yeah. If it'll make it to the end of August, I have a chance at growing it into winter. And I believe if I can get it to grow into winter, that I can pull off maybe 40 to 50 pounds with this thing. All right. So that's the hope. That's the hope. And
it sounds like what you need to do is put a raised bed inside of your greenhouse.
I got 2 of them in there.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is it gets so stinking hot in the summer in there that even with stuff going, fans and stuff going, it's still too hot for them. So the only way I would have to start it in fall and then try to grow it through winter.
Or could you grow it in a big pot? Could you grow it in a big pot where you can move it into the greenhouse? Like say you grow it, like try a couple of them in those mineralic tubs, and then when it starts cooling down, move it into the greenhouse. I bet you could weed them out, and pick like the biggest ones.
Right.
You just one per mineralic tub and just let it get all the nutrients and stuff.
Yeah.
I bet you could do that.
You could do that, or I could get the 45-gallon smart pots,
Yeah,
and use one of those because they got carrying handles on them, and then it would just carry them into the greenhouse that way. That might be an option too. I
for
didn't think
sure.
about that, but yeah, I mean, it is a trick trying to grow root crops in West Virginia for giant stuff because of the heat. Because here's the thing, everybody's like, well, just start it early. Well, I start some of these in January.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the end of, like, I'll start them in little cups and then I'll move them into water bottles. I'll cut the top of the water bottle off and I'll sit there and watch the roots, and I'm like, all right, this thing's ready to be potted up into something bigger, and I'll pot it up. By March, everything, all my root crops are outside by March.
Wow.
But most people are thinking, well, root crops is 50 days max, most of them, like beets and stuff like that. They're only getting 50 days, but you're talking about a giant.
Yeah.
You're talking
These
about
are extreme rutabagas.
Right. Something that will grow in excess of 100 days, and so when we plant them out, they're good all spring, and then June comes and they just get smacked, because that heat and humidity comes, and they're just like, yeah, bro, this is not for me. And I can try to shade them. I can try to put a fan on them, all kinds of different things to keep them cooled off. But like this year, that one tried to rot on me, and I literally had to scoop out the rot. I even made a video on how to do it, but I scooped the rot out, cut all the bad out, and caught it in time to where I saved it. Now, that may have slowed it down some too, but we're still getting pretty good growth right now. But you have to watch that watering, and because a lot of people don't understand that a root crop don't want all that water.
Right.
They want water, but they want that soil to drain off and dry quickly. And that's what causes the rot is all that water standing. Well, anytime that we'll go months sometimes with no rain or very little measurable rain. And then all of a sudden we'll get 2 weeks hammered by nonstop rain. Like we just got through that. We just had 2 weeks of nonstop rain. And every day I'm out there checking that thing going, it's going to rot. It's going to rot. It's going to rot because it can't handle no more. So that's the other part of growing out there that you're not able to control that either. I've thought about like building something around it to where it shed the water off and all that stuff, but you're still going to get that ground saturation down deep, and even, I think maybe even then, that it would wick some of that water up, even if I had it, not wet in the pot, it would still wick it up into the soil anyways. So there's a huge thing for trying to grow root crops here. But my goal is to eventually have the U.S. record or the world record for a rutabaga. I think the world record's 110 pounds. I think. Yeah.
That's a big rutabaga.
It is a huge rutabaga, but I think the U.S. record is like 70 or something,
Yeah, because rutabagas aren't nearly as popular as they are like in Europe or like Eastern Europe, especially. My dad got turned on to. I think he was trying to get something else, and he bought a rutabaga on accident. Although it was what looks like a rutabaga. It's a big is it a turnip or something like that?
Yeah, turnips look like them. And so some beets look like them.
So I think he was trying to get a turnip, and he found out that he really loved rutabagas. His favorite way to do is mash them.
Mash them up. Yep, like mashed potatoes.
He said he gave me one, and I ended up I forgot about it, and I never eat it. But he said it's a good starch. It's a starch that's like better for you than potatoes or something like that.
It is.
It's way easier to grow. I didn't know you could transplant them.
Yep, you can.
I didn't know you could transplant something like that. So that is something around here is what we will grow those. People laugh, like we grow like our brassicas and
right.
We grow all that stuff over winter, like during the winter time.
Yeah.
And my dad was growing rutabagas over winter. Like he started his like in I think November. He was growing them. And for small ones and like non-crazy people, you can pick them pretty quick. Like
right. Yeah, I eat we eat the regular ones, kohlrabi and carrots and stuff like that. We'll eat the regular stuff, and I mean, even the big stuff, like as long as I haven't sprayed them with something, I try not to spray any like harsh stuff. Right now, I'm trying to get away from spraying my giant pumpkins with stuff like Eagle 20 and imidacloprid and stuff like that. Still got to kind of do it. I have noticed a big change in putting cover crop down and how that's kind of masked them away from the squash borer, the squash vine borers, squash bugs, and cucumber beetles. Where I have heavy cover crop down, they're not bothering my plants. But where I have no cover crop down, they're covered in cuke beetles and squash bugs and stuff like that. So there's a trade-off there. It's also a mess when you're trying to grow big giant pumpkins and you got a cover crop that's 3 foot tall. So
I can imagine. The only thing I really spray for vine borers, and people, that's the number one thing people ask about when you're growing any kind of cucurbit, is hey, I tried to grow squash last year and I got destroyed by the squash vine borer. My thing is, when I have squash, I'm spraying weekly, and I'm spraying I usually use Captain Jack's, or it's Bone-Eyed Neem Max. It's just neem oil, but you have to do it early. You have to start early because once you start seeing the vine borer, it's too late. It's already there. The cucumber beetles, I'm gonna be honest with you, the only thing I found that really took care of the cucumber beetles was either pyrethrin, something that could penetrate that exoskeleton, or I had such an infestation one year I had to use 7 dust. And as long as you read the instructions, and people will blast you online for using certain things. I'm one of the few people on Instagram, it's like that, telling you exactly what I use. A lot of people are scared to say what they use. But I had infestation of cucumber beetles so bad last year that it was literally I killed 6 in a minute. In a 1 minute span. That's how many, and I'd never had them that bad. And you can plan out what you're going to do every year, but there's always a new pest pressure every single year. It's not a battle you can win. It's a war that you're waging.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Because you think you're prepared for one thing and you get hit with something completely different. It's nuts.
It is. And like I was getting, literally go out there and the male blooms on my pumpkin plants would have 30 some cuke beetles inside of it. Yeah.
Oh,
and I'm
God.
And it'd be every male flower, and I'm sitting there going, and they're in there having a good time, buddy, just having an orgy, and I'm like, no, we ain't breeding, bro. We ain't breeding in here, So I'd grab the whole flower off and squish it in my hand and just squeeze and throw them down and stomp it, because I am not about that. You know what I mean? I hate them bugs. And then somebody was like, well, this winter, put a real heavy tarp down and fry all their eggs. And I'm like, does that even work? I know it'll kill seeds, but will that kill the eggs? So I may do that, because I can't deal with the cuke beetles anymore.
I've even heard, so some people say put the silage tarps down to kill weeds. I heard of another method that I might try this year, and I forget what it's called exactly, but instead of taking a black mat, you take clear plastic.
Okay.
And what happens is it gets so hot. It's like a greenhouse effect, and it kills everything.
Yep. That's what I was talking about, using the clear plastic.
Oh, the clear. Okay.
And just cook them. Just fry everything. The thing is that kills all your good microbes too.
That's the problem. It kills everything.
Everything. Nothing makes it through that. So just got a few more questions here. One of them is why do you have so many different flowers? Because you got a lot of different flowers and stuff. Is it just because you like it, or is it because you get those pollinators in there?
It's a combination of all of that. I don't do any of this alone. My wife is just as involved in the garden as I am. She just hates being on camera.
Mine too. Mine hates.
She's usually behind the camera, videoing me or whatever. When it's not too hot. If it's too hot, she melts. But usually she's out there. I'm the grower and she's the harvester. She goes out there and picks a lot of the stuff.
Yep.
And she loves to see a lot of flowers. I mean, and so do I. I like seeing. I'm like seeing exotic stuff. I've kind of, been focusing on more native stuff. I always tell people, if you're just starting out, I would go start out with native stuff. Start out with Texas native. Start out with whatever find out what grows well in your area that's native.
Right.
Start out with that because you'll have less heartbreak.
Yep.
You'll be more encouraged to grow something more advanced, than maybe the next year. But I've adopted more native stuff in the yard to to bring those pollinators in as well. I love seeing the flowers. I love all that stuff. But having like hummingbirds coming in and butterflies, there's parts of the
Sorry.
yard. Oh, you're good, man. There's parts of the yard where I don't spray anything. I just have them as like my pollinator areas. Pretty much all my natives and all just like straight pollinator plants. I don't really spray them with any insecticides or anything like that. I just leave them for the pollinators. I'll give them a little bit of foliar feed organic fertilizer, but I leave those just to bring in the pollinators. And that's one thing I can recommend to people, if you're having issues with pollination rates, like say on your squash or your, anything, grow some like zinnias, grow some, whatever,
Right.
put some geraniums over there, any kind of flower, will bring in those pollinators to help you out,
Right.
and advance that pollination rate, bring in more pollinators. Pollinators are the best. The best thing
Exactly.
for the garden.
Yep. And the more that you have of that stuff, the more of a I call it a conglomerate of plants, right? The more you'll see of the good beneficial bugs, like your ladybugs,
Yes.
your mantises and things like that are going to come in and kill off the bad stuff that you don't want
Right.
in there. So that's also another good benefit to it. Next question is, how do you decide which flowers to grow? Like,
So
is there a process? Or are you just like, oh, that's just pretty? Or is it kind of set down and thought out? Like when we grow something like, carrots and this, that, and the other.
So for the most part, none of my flowering plants are annuals. So I most of them are tropicals that grow every year. A lot of people have greenhouses so they can get started like on the spring crop early. My greenhouse is to hold all my tropicals over winter. So like most of my stuff, I've kind of decided, what I want here and there. Some of the stuff like my adeniums and plumerias, I started a lot of them from seed. So I don't know what color they're going to be. Even plumerias sometimes will take 3 years to bloom.
Oh, wow.
If you're growing from seed, so it's kind of that's what's really cool. You can
Right.
start them from seed, and you have no idea what they're going to be for 3 years.
That's cool.
It's cool. So, but I try to break it up. I don't want I think of the pollinators. I don't want to have just all yellow flowers. I don't want to have all white flowers. I want a good mixture of everything. And I've really gone and kind of focused on a lot of the Texas natives as well. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Next one is how do you grow so well in the pots that you grow in? Because I know like you were saying you can get a 6 foot tall fig in a 3-gallon pot, and I'm sitting there going, how can you do that? Because my mind's sitting there going, this thing. I remember when I bought my Chicago Hardy, it was in one of them black 3-gallon pots, and I'm sitting there going, this thing needs up potted right now. It's done got, and I'm like, I go buy like a 5 or 6 gallon pot and transplanted over into that. It died off on the porch. I brought it in immediately. A month later, it's throwing off leaves and it's like whoosh, growing in this 5-6 gallon pot. And I'm like, oh, this thing's got to get planted out. Oh gosh, by springtime it's going to be huge. And I freaked out because I didn't know, right? And so then I go and I plant it out in the yard, and it did great in the yard, but it ended up dying. But my mind was saying, this if the top is this big, the roots are even bigger, and I got to get it out of this pot. So how do you know to do what you do in those small pots and stuff like you do?
So I didn't know this at the beginning. I used to be the guy that would go to the store and at Lowe's specifically and buy the cheapest bag of soil I could buy because I could get the most out of it, after, going on 7-8 years doing this kind of stuff, I've kind of, more than that, that's got close to 9. I've been doing this for a while, but it's something, it's the thing we think about the least when we're gardening, but it's probably most important is what you start with, and it's good soil.
Right.
Soil can be expensive. Soil can be very expensive, but there's ways to like amend your potting soil and stuff to, make it work.
Right.
I don't buy a super expensive bag of soil. It's maybe $6 to $7. Maybe the bags I buy are usually less than $5 a bag. What I'll do is I'll buy my own perlite and mix it into the soil, because there's a difference between like raised bed soil and compost and potting soil, like for your pots. If you're going to grow something in a container, you're going to want to add something like a perlite or a what's the other one called, vermiculite or whatever.
Yep.
And what that's going to allow for it's going to help the soil from clumping and getting real packed, and it's going to allow for better drainage too. One good thing about growing stuff in containers or pots is that it's naturally above the ground, so you have gravity, forcing that water out. So it's not holding water as much.
Right.
So I am watering more frequently. I have a micro sprinkler setup that goes around my yard. I have 3 zones. I still water stuff by hand, but 2/3 of my yard is on a sprinkler system where I turn it on
and I like that system. It's a nice system. I seen your video on that.
Yeah, I know people will say like, why does he need to get a drip irrigation? Well, if it was all one level raised bed, it would make sense to have a drip irrigation. But because I've got pots everywhere, and I got that one main line and then a 1/4 inch line coming out, and it's watering like that, so it works for me.
Right.
And that helps out with them being being watered. But I think, like, besides the soil, but besides getting on a watering routine, I stay on my fertilizer routine. I stay on my fertilizer. Not every fertilizer I use is organic. Most of them are. I don't claim to be an organic gardener. I'm not OMRI certified. Texas Garden Guys OMRI certified. That's not me.
Right.
You're talking to the wrong guy, because I've never claimed. I had someone say this the other day. I posted a video and it was something non-organic, and someone commented, goes, "This goes against everything you've ever taught us." And I was like, "No, it doesn't." It's just like, it's like crazy. It's like she was like making out to be like Superman took his cape off or something. And I was like, "No, it's like, no, I'm just not." So I stay on a fertilizer routine. I make sure I feed my plants even during the summer. When if you're watering more frequently, you're flushing a lot of those nutrients out of your pot. So you need to stay on that granular fertilizer. And then I also, when I do stuff like neem oil or whatever, I do a foliar fertilizer as well, because studies have shown that plants can absorb more nutrients through their leaves than they can from the roots. So it's a really good way to feed your plants as well.
It is very good. Yeah. There's 80% of the stomatas, or let me see, 80% of the nutrients that are sprayed on the stomatas underneath the leaf is uptaking nutrients and stuff. So I started feeding a lot of, like, I learned that back in 2021 after my first year of growing giant stuff. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool stuff. So I had started using Prevogenics, and they were like, well, we're tailor fit to only be foliar fed. Yeah, you can drench us through, but our stuff is specifically made for foliar. Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. And 2022, 2023 were phenomenal years. Right now, I mean, I'm not doing so hot with pumpkins and stuff because it's just been a really crappy year for growing. But that's not their fault. You know what I mean? It's just the year. But I have noticed that when you don't feed through the foliar feeding, you're not maximizing your growth at all. You're getting growth, you're getting good gains, whatever it is that you're wanting to see, whether you're growing giants or you're growing, regular crops. But when you hit them with foliar, them plants respond immediately. And if you're in fruit stage, you can see a huge difference in that fruit size and gains. So I'm a big fan of foliar feeding.
Yeah, and you were talking about the stigmata, so the stomata, and so that means they're going to be opened up first thing in the morning and late in the evening. So anytime I'm spraying fertilizer or neem oil, I'm doing it very late in the evening. So like if the sun is going down at 7:30, I'm spraying at 7:15. Yep. And like every Sunday night, that's what I'm doing at 7:15. I'm doing 15 minutes. I've got my backpack sprayer. I'm out there spraying my stuff, taking care of business before I go back to work the next day. That's right. You got to stay on top of it. You got to stay on top of it. And I use a liquid fertilizer from a company down here in Houston called Microlife, and
Okay.
this is a good point for people who are just getting into foliar feeding. You want to focus on what is your foliar feed for, because most of them are very low nitrogen. They're not going to burn anything up. They're going
Right.
to be smaller increments. But the one I was using was called Ocean Harvest, and it was more nitrogen based. And
Ah.
so I was just using it, and I was getting a ton of leafy growth, but I wasn't getting a bunch of blooms,
Right.
for like my tomatoes and stuff. And so I got to a point where I was rotating now. I rotate from like the Ocean Harvest to one called Maximum Blooms. So
Okay.
so 1 week I'll use like the more nitrogen, next week I'll use the more phosphorus, one, and kind of rotate it and get a little bit of both worlds,
Right. Right. Well, did you ever try like giving like a third of the ocean one and then 2/3 the other and see what that does, like in one thing, and see what that does?
I haven't tried blending them, but I mean it's a good idea. It is a good idea because usually it's like both of them are 2 ounce per gallon. So
Right.
I could just do a 50-50, and
Right.
just do a 1 ounce of each.
Right.
I might start doing that actually.
Or even if you like did half an ounce of the heavy nitrogen and then just the regular 2 ounces of the other, and just
Yeah.
play around, see what you get, because I'm like that with nitrogen. I like feeding the nitrogen the entire year. Like when I set a pumpkin, I slack off on the nitrogen because I want it to go into fruiting and to push that
Right.
fruit. But after about day 25, of that pumpkin growing, when it starts to kick into high gear, day 25 through 50, I start pushing nitrogen again, because I need that nitrogen to carry the rest of the way through the year, because I'm going to have leaves that are going to die off and stuff like that they're going to have to replace. And so, you gotta get that nitrogen fed back in there to where it's still like, oh, I still have to produce, leaves. It's not all about the fruit right now. So,
Right.
yeah,
And everybody's going to be different,
that's right.
That's what I always tell people, when they're asking me questions about my yard, hey, use what I'm doing or make it work for you, because what's working in my yard might not work in your yard.
That's exactly right, because your soil could be completely different than the guy that you're talking to online.
100%.
So the last question I have for you is any advice that you would give to all gardeners at any level?
My number one advice I usually give anybody is start small. Start with one. Don't go out. Don't watch one of my videos and go out and buy 30 tomato plants or 5 desert roses or all this stuff. Start with one. If you like, people who want to get into vegetable gardening, grow what you eat. Grow what you eat, of course. Say you don't want to buy tomatoes this year, so you get 3 tomato plants. Start out small. Quality versus quantity. I cut back on my quantity this year. I focused on having fewer plants and paying more attention to my plants, doing more pruning, staying, and then next year say, hey, I bet I love tomatoes, but I'd love to grow some peppers now too. So let's throw in 3 or 4 peppers. And, by year 5, you're growing a little bit of everything.
Yep.
And especially after the pandemic and everything, we saw, the stuff we, never thought we were going to be not, I don't think I always use this example, but no one ever thought that it would be hard to find toilet paper.
No,
you know what
nobody.
I mean? Did anyone ever think they couldn't go to the store and get toilet paper?
No.
Imagine if you can't find bread. Imagine if you can't find cheese. Imagine if you can't find, so I think that woke a lot of people up, and I think gardening and homesteading in general has really grown since 2020, man, because people are so disconnected from the food chain, from it's the supply chain in general, I guess. And people are wanting to get more involved in where their supplies are coming from. So
that's right.
I just start now. Don't wait. It may be too hot right now to start your tomato garden, but guess what? You can build your raised beds, or you can get your land tilled up. You can put in a cover crop and get ready for a fall garden. It's not too late to start.
No, it's not. It's never too late to start.
Absolutely.
I did have an idea. You could probably grow fall tomatoes down there, couldn't you?
I do grow fall tomatoes.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's
Yeah, I have a 20-foot. I got a 20-foot raised bed in my greenhouse. It goes the entire length of one side, and I've never grown them before, but I ordered. They call it ground cherries.
okay.
I'd
Yeah,
never.
I got a
I
bunch of those. They grow wild here in my garden.
really.
Yeah.
They drop seeds like cherry tomatoes and come
Yep.
up every.
Yep.
So I thought about trying to do some of those this year. I also I
I can
got some.
send you a bunch of seeds from them if you want to try some seeds.
I'm an Amazon whore, so I freaking as soon as someone told me about them, I ordered those and I ordered tomatillos, and they're already here. And so like I'm just waiting for it to cool down a little bit because if I go start seeds right
Dude,
now,
you don't have
they'll
to
get
worry about the
roasted.
heat with them.
Well, I'm saying even like just to get them because just seedlings in general, unless I
Right.
have them like under complete shade, it'll
Right.
just get you just can't keep that small pot uh,
Wet
moist
enough.
enough.
Yeah. Okay. I
They
got you.
the seed trays they dry out so fast. It's just so
Right.
hot. So I usually have to wait till like September to start like fall crops. But tomatoes and stuff like that come up pretty quick. So yeah, but I definitely will be.
Yeah. 'Cause I'm telling you what, them ground cherries around here, dude. I bet you I pulled probably 1,000 of them plants out of my pumpkin patch.
Wow.
Yeah. And the kids will go out there and eat them all up, and yeah, they are those. I never planted those. Those just come up wild, and they're great. But I should have never planted. The two things I tell people I should have never planted in my garden. One was a tomatillo, and two was the huckleberry.
Oh really?
Because I only planted them in 2021, and I am still growing tomatillos and huckleberries to this day, and I didn't want them after that.
Yeah.
It's just no, that was a bad thing.
That's where container gardening can come in handy, you know, because I think I screwed up this year. I put that Thai basil in my raised bed, and I'm already seeing little seedlings popping up. So I'm probably going to have to do that clear tarp over my stuff this year because I'll have this, you know, people have it with cherry tomatoes all the time, you know, where it's just,
or in your off season, just make it really hot with compost and kill it all.
That's true. Yeah, I can definitely do that too.
And then you're not going to kill off your good microbes.
Right. That's true.
Because all your good microbes will stay down deep in the raised bed, and you're just killing off that top level with hot compost. You know, so yeah,
that's true. That's true. But yeah, maybe I'll need to do those tomatillos or the ground cherries in a pot. Then maybe I need to try that out.
Yeah,
just to be safe.
Definitely, because I probably should take you one day out there on like FaceTime or something and show you. Like I'll just like they're everywhere, like all over, like, and I will pull them like weeding them, right? And I'll go back there and a week later, and they'll all be back like this, and I'll be weeding them out. Like they love my pumpkin patch, dude, and it's just like y'all can't be in here growing. Like I love eating you, the kids love eating you. You just can't be in here growing because this ain't working. But yeah, I thought about trying to grow the world record tomatillo plant and the world record ground cherry plant
because they'll get pretty big, right?
Kevin Forty in the UK grew the world record tomatillo plant at like 6 foot or something like that. Right?
That's not even right that a European's growing a tomatillo that big.
Right. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I should go out there and get one of them tomatillo plants out of the garden, put it in a smart pot, and grow that thing all stinking winter long. Because I know I'd end up with 10-foot one, you know?
Yeah.
So I've thought about doing that, man. It's just those little things like that, you know, that it's just fun. You know, he's got the world record for a 6 foot tall potato plant.
It's not even that tall. It's not even that tall. It's so crazy.
6 foot for a potato plant. And I'm like, okay, I'm growing a potato plant just to grow a 6 foot plus to potato plant.
I'm surprised you haven't gone after the world's tallest okra yet because
I have it out. We need to FaceTime one time so I can take you and walk you around my garden. I've got one out there right now that I'm trying to grow for an okra.
What variety is it? What variety is it?
Oh God, it's a weird name, but it gets like 20 foot tall or something.
Is it the Motherland?
No. This one's got a weird name. It's a
Necroma Tintin.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Yes.
And because it gets like 20 foot or something like that, it said, right?
And Africa, they have them like as trees out in the woods.
Yeah. So that's the variety that I planted. I planted all the seeds that was in that pack, right?
Oh my God.
And I was like, dude, I had 72 okra plants that I put out this year.
You're never going to get rid of those now. They're going to be self-seeding themselves now.
Well, so look, I got okra out there that are this long. Yeah. The pods are this long already because I'm trying to grow the heaviest pod. I'm trying to grow the longest pod, and I'm trying to grow the tallest plant.
So the one I had a good run one year. I had a 16-foot. I had a 16-foot okra plant. It was grown in a container.
Oh, wow.
It was grown in a mineral tub. It actually grew through the drainage holes and plugged them up. And so I had to go drilling holes in the side. But it was about 16 foot tall, I think. And it was the motherland okra.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's pretty wild. The okra is almost inedible. I mean,
right.
And the chromatinsin is not much better. It gets pretty woody pretty quick from what I remember.
Yeah, like they get like super small.
Yeah. But yeah, those African varieties, the chromatinsin and the motherland, it was so thick. It was so thick. I mean, it must have been about that thick at the bottom. I had to get a chainsaw to cut it up. It was bad. It was nuts. Wow. I had to dig it up. But the world record okra is this pencil thin, a little 20-something foot, and it's grown up the side of a building somewhere. And I was like, that's the most BS record ever because it's this.
It should be self-supported.
Yes, 100%.
Anything. My take of this has always been, and this is why I say that this is probably going to get off topic, but we shouldn't allow Guinness to hold the world record stuff for plants because they have really, really skewed a lot of the records, you know what I mean, by allowing stuff like that. Like they even messed my record up, my world record for my 83.1 pound butternut, right? So I think that if you're going to grow a sunflower, you're going to grow okra, whatever it is that's tall, it must be self-supported. Now, if you stake it up like corn, like I have to stake my corn up, right? Because even though my corn is growing those extra legs out, right, and trying to stabilize itself, a bad windstorm could come through and blow it over. But if you're just staking it up with a bamboo or you know a 12-foot long piece of furring strip, you still have that chance that it could blow over. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when you're pinning it to a wall or you're building these, like there's guys who grow these giant sunflowers that are growing them 20 some feet long, you know, tall, you know, 20 to 26 foot long. They build a scaffold and then they grow them up. They grow them up inside the scaffold. And it's like that. That's kind of cheating.
Yeah. Well, I noticed on the okra, they must have been pruning it like the whole and just making it focus all this energy up.
Energy on the top growth.
Yeah. And so it was kind of BS. You know, I was like, this is kind of BS.
That's not cool at all. Yeah.
I need to find a record that I can beat down here in Texas. With our growing season, I think I could probably find something that could grow big.
Dude, I will send you giant cantaloupe seeds, giant tomato seeds, giant cucumber seeds. Watermelon might be a little harder. You got to, for a giant watermelon, you'd probably have to have at least a 10 by 10 area, like 10 foot.
Yeah, I'm very spaced.
Yeah. Right. But cantaloupe, you could probably do in that raised bed, in that 20-foot raised bed. You could do a cantaloupe inside of there. Okay. And then you just have to train the vines to go the right way. You know what I mean? But you could do it. And then for the cucumber, all you got to do is have a trellis and grow that up there. Giant tomato would be pretty good for you down there, you know, especially with your limited space and stuff. And then I would say,
has anyone done the biggest? Wonder what the biggest loofah is.
The biggest loofah was weighed last year. I think it was like 6 pounds and something.
That doesn't seem that big.
No, it's not. Let me see. Let me see here. World record loofah.
Because loofahs can get pretty big, but they're not very heavy.
5 pounds. The world record was weighed September 22nd. It was 5 pounds, 12.2 ounces.
Wow, but it's a big. I mean, they're pretty light, so
Yeah,
it's a good sized loofah.
yeah, that was a pretty decent sized loofah. The longest loofah is 4'3".
That's pretty big.
That's a big long loofah, bro. That's a freaking long loofah. So yeah, like yeah, the record things is fun. You know what I mean? You just gotta stay away from the competition and the competitors. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because they're the ones that really put a drag on it. You know,
Oh, I
me,
bet.
I'm just out there to beat me. You know, if I get a record, haha, good. You know, I just want to have fun and play and show the world what I do. Right. Outside of that, the competition though, it really that it stinks. You know what I mean? Because
Wow.
it's all about them and you know they want that spotlight too and I'm not that kind of guy. I just want to share this stuff because I think it's cool and I want other people to think it's cool and try it out, you know. So,
Right.
but the competition, I mean, you would think you were playing for like football money, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's that bad. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, some of these way offs are making $50,000+ for first place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of money that could be made at some of these way offs, but the majority of the way offs, first place is like $1,000. You know,
That's still pretty cool though.
yeah, it's still good money. But yeah, I love growing stuff like that. It's a lot of fun, and so I'll send you a bunch of seeds down there, dude. Like
Oh, for
giant
sure, man.
cantaloupe and stuff, man. You can try that stuff out and maybe pull some records. I have sent other people from Texas pumpkin seeds to try to get the state record for the pumpkin. I think y'all's state record is like 532 pounds or something like that,
Is
right?
that big?
I mean, I generally hit that by day 40.
I think it's the humidity here that
Yeah.
probably gets it.
If I was going to grow down there, I would probably start my pumpkin inside in February, plant it out by March. That way, by June, July, I'm weighing it because I
Wow.
don't think it would make it in the heat after that down
Nah,
there.
you have to put a shade or something over it.
Yep,
100%. And
definitely, and have to have misters and all kinds of stuff.
yeah,
So,
the humidity is unreal. It probably just rot. It
oh
probably just
yeah,
rot.
definitely. I think a lot of those guys that have tried it are in eastern, like northeastern Texas that have tried
Yeah.
to grow them, and they do all right, but they run into a lot of problems come July, August, and their pumpkins usually go down.
Probably have better luck with watermelons.
A lot better luck with watermelon, or like I said, cantaloupe. Cantaloupe,
Yeah.
dude. When you see a 75-pound cantaloupe, yeah. I mean, I got this picture of my buddy holding this cantaloupe, dude, and it looks like two beach balls stacked on top of each other, and he's sitting there holding it.
God.
And they're
That's
like, "What is
insane.
that?" It's a cantaloupe. No, that ain't no cantaloupe. Yes, it is.
Dude, people don't realize how big that stuff is. They'll plant the whole bag of My dad this year, he planted pumpkins and cantaloupes at the same time.
Oh man.
And he planted like the whole bag of pumpkins and cantaloupes. And his whole side of his garden was just taken over, man. It's just
vines everywhere. Can't find nothing.
Oh yeah, man. He's just digging around. But he ate a ton. My dad loves cantaloupe, so he was happy. He was a happy camper.
There ain't nothing better than a cantaloupe. There ain't nobody gonna change my mind.
I like cantaloupe, and I do like pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie is, when I was deployed, I never knew. Well, so I love pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie. When I was deployed, I had my first sweet potato pie because I thought it was pumpkin pie.
Right?
You can't hardly taste the difference. I love them both though. I love sweet potatoes.
Sweet potato pie is really, really good. I can eat that. I hate pumpkin pie though.
Really?
I hate it. Yeah.
You can taste the difference.
Yeah. Oh, I know the difference. Yeah. You put a sweet potato pie in front of me, I'll eat the whole thing and lick the plate clean. But you put a pumpkin pie in front of me, I ain't touching it. So, and here, you want to know something that's cool? Pumpkin pie is not really made from pumpkins.
Really?
It's made from squash. Yep. The puree that they make the pumpkin pie filling with is not made from a true pumpkin. That it is a squash.
What kind of squash?
A lot of what we call pumpkins are not pumpkins. They're true squash.
Huh.
So like a field pumpkin is a true pumpkin, right? But a Cinderella pumpkin is a squash.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, white borers, blue Jardales. Those are technically squash. Yeah,
I guess that's true.
they're not really pumpkins. So
that's a rabbit hole you can go down though, because like
right,
not all what is it? Not all squash are zucchini, but all zucchini are squash.
right,
It's it's one of
exactly,
those things you can go, but they're all in the cucurbit family. That's why I just
right,
call them cucurbits. And
right.
cucurbit's a fun word to say. I
It
like
is.
it.
It's very fun, and it's even funner to try to spell half the time.
Oh my god.
Well, man, I'm gonna have you hang on here and stuff. We'll wrap up on the other side of this, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on tonight and spending time with us.
Oh, no problem, man. Thanks for having me anytime, dude.
Absolutely, man. Well, guys, we're gonna get out of here, so we'll see y'all guys next Tuesday, and we appreciate you watching. And yeah, we'll see you next Tuesday right here in the Hollers and Hills of West Virginia. See you guys.